From an explosion to some truly disturbing displays of violence, here are 8 shocking acts caught on nanny cams. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to They Will Kill You. Hit the like button and request any topics you'd like to learn about in the comments section below. Number 8. Boiler explosion. What started as a normal day at the Fayola residence in Bellingham, Washington, would eventually develop into an important PSA. Anne Marie Fayola was out running errands when she received a call from her babysitter. In the phone call, which would understandably terrify any mother, Fayola was told there had been an explosion in the children's playroom. Luckily, everyone was safe. At first, the babysitter heard banging and clicking noises. Then she saw dust and smoke rising through the vents. Afterwards, a big explosion occurred, which was captured on the nanny cam in the downstairs playroom. The camera captured the powerful blast, which collapsed the wall and launched debris everywhere. The boiler in the adjacent space had exploded due to an accumulation of pressure. The Fayola's 4-year-old had left the room earlier while their baby was sound asleep upstairs. The family was very fortunate because the blast occurred sideways instead of upwards, which could have seriously hurt their youngest or even worse. Upon hearing the loud bang, the babysitter quickly took the children out of the house and waited for the firefighters. Anne Marie and her husband Chris later shared the video of the explosion on Facebook in order to remind people of how important it is to check their boilers. Number 7. Baby treated like a rag doll. In 2017, Anne-Marie Theron from Namibia, Zimbabwe, was looking for someone to babysit her 9-month-old daughter, Layla. Some of Theron's friends recommended Nicolene Hoses, who had worked for them for several years. After a while, Theron's husband, Johan, became suspicious of Hoses. Bruises started showing up on Layla's body, and the child also seemed to be terrified of the new babysitter. One morning, the couple secretly installed a nanny cam in their room where the baby's crib was. When Theron watched the video later that day, she saw Hoses essentially treating her daughter like a rag doll. Hoses entered the room carrying the baby by her neck and then threw her face first into the crib. When Layla started crying in pain, the babysitter simply walked out and shut the door behind her. Shocked by the video, the couple was left wondering how long the abuse had been going on for. Feeling betrayed, they recalled the bruises that they'd noticed at times on the child's feet, neck, or shoulder. There was also one incident when they'd found Layla with a badly swollen eye, and the babysitter told them that she'd had a fall. Hoses, a mother of 4, was taken into custody by the authorities and subsequently faced a charge of attempted murder. Number 6. House fire. In 2016, a devastating wildfire swept through Fort McMurray in Alberta, Canada. More than 88,000 people were forced out of their homes in the largest wildfire evacuation in Alberta's history. As the fire was closing in, James O'Reilly and his wife barely had enough time to grab some clothes before getting in their cars and driving away. O'Reilly left his home of 20 years behind, then went through the painful experience of watching it burn down on his iPhone. The phone, which was connected to a nanny cam, showed the living room front window and 2 clownfish in a tank. A few minutes into the video, the window shatters and smoke starts pouring into the room. It soon blocks out the light, at which point only the sound of popping and breaking is heard, before the footage cuts out. O'Reilly and his wife drove away with their camper and considered themselves lucky that at least they had a home on the road. Number 5. Burning a child with a curling iron. 21-year-old Nosifo Nsumalo was arrested in 2017 after nanny cam footage showed her using a curling iron to discipline a child. Angela Persaud from Long Island, New York, had hired Nsumalo to babysit her 2-year-old son, Xander. The mother noticed red burn marks on his body while she was giving him a bath. In the video, the babysitter can be seen testing the curling iron's temperature against her hand before touching Xander's hands and legs with it. She then hugs him and tells him that's what happens when he doesn't listen. The disturbing behavior was characterized by the boy's mother as playing warped mind games. Nsumalo was arrested and told the authorities that she decided to burn the child because she was tired and he didn't listen to her. The babysitter's twisted idea of discipline earned her charges of second-degree assault, endangering the welfare of a child, and criminal possession of a weapon in the 4th degree. Even though her actions had been recorded, Nsumalo pleaded not guilty. Number 4. Man viciously beating a cat. Jordan Lindquist was a guest of Colleen Cloward and her son Caleb at their home in Saratoga Springs. When Shadow, the family cat, started acting strangely, the Clowards set up a nanny cam. At the time, they only suspected something was wrong but had no idea the degree of animal cruelty Shadow had been subjected to. Caleb Cloward was watching the camera remotely when he saw Jordan Lindquist enter the room. He pulled the cat from under the bed and threw it on the mattress. Lindquist pinned the pet prostate on the bed and held nothing back as he punched it repeatedly in the head. He then started violently shaking the cat before throwing it on the ground. Caleb called his friend and told him to stop. At that point, Lindquist left and returned for his things several days later. That's when he was arrested and subsequently charged with 1 count of felony animal cruelty. Fortunately, Shadow survived the abuse, but Colleen Cloward couldn't bring herself to watch the extremely violent video. The Clowards didn't know the reasons behind Lindquist's despicable actions. They could perhaps be best determined by a mental health specialist. Number 3. Home invasion. In 2013, a home invasion which left a woman and her child brutally traumatized was caught on a nanny cam. The woman and her daughter were watching TV when 42-year-old Sean Custis kicked down the back door of their house in Millburn, New Jersey. In the disturbing video, Custis throws the woman down a flight of stairs, repeatedly punches her in the face, and kicks her in the head while she's down. The attack unfolded before the woman's 3-year-old daughter, who was crying on the couch and cowering in fear. Because the vicious beating was caught on a nanny cam, it wasn't long before Custis, a career criminal, was identified. His victim chose to protect her identity, but suffered extensively as a result of the attack. Most of her teeth as well as a bone in her back were broken, and she partially lost feeling on her right side. The emotional impact was reportedly even worse, as she had to move, wasn't able to work, and would require extensive therapy to try and regain her sense of security. She was commended, however, for the courage she showed by confronting her attacker in court. Custis, who had a long rap sheet which included another attack almost identical to the one caught on video, was sentenced to life in prison. Number 2. Sexual abuse of a child. One of the most shocking and disturbing acts on this list took place on May the 10th, 2015. That's when a nanny cam caught Dwight E. Gehring sexually abusing a 5-year-old child. At the time, 67-year-old Gehring was a licensed massage therapist. It isn't clear if this was a factor in how he was able to gain access to the house. The video helped the authorities identify Gehring and was used against him as evidence. In September that same year, he was found guilty of 1 count of rape by force, a first-degree felony. He was also found guilty of 1 count of gross sexual imposition of a child under the age of 13. Gehring was sentenced to 13 years in prison and for the rest of his life would be known as a Tier 3 sex offender. Number 1. Assault of a child. In 2018, a babysitter from Kent, Washington, faced some serious charges involving the assault of the child she'd been caring for. The surveillance system from the house 27-year-old Fantasia Riley was babysitting at captured some truly horrific footage. A baby girl had been left in her care in April. Then in May, when the child was only 3 months old, she started having seizures and stopped breathing. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors managed to stabilize her, and an investigation ensued. When the video was retrieved from the house, it showed numerous instances of violent behavior displayed by the babysitter, who has a 7-month-old child of her own. Over the course of a month, she'd purposefully hit, dropped, thrown, and shaken the baby she'd been entrusted to look after. Doctors claimed that because of Riley's abuse, the child suffered brain injuries, which would most likely lead to developmental delays. One doctor who consulted on the case stated it was only a matter of time before the trauma would have killed the child. Riley faced second-degree charges of assault of a child, and the prosecutor questioned whether she should be allowed near a child, including her own, ever again. Thanks for watching. Which do you think was the most shocking act on our list? Let us know in the comments section below.